skipper, a young sailor says to his captain as he's holding out an envelope. He said, here's a personal message from you. An envelope came in from the admiral. And the captain says, well, just open it up for me and just read it to me. And the young man says, well, it's marked personal, so maybe you should open it and read it yourself. And the captain says, well, no, why don't you go ahead and open it, unless, of course, you're a little bit uncomfortable and embarrassed by some flattery. And he puffs out his chest a little bit. And so the young man opens up the envelope and he reads the letter. And it says to the captain, you are the most egotistical, conceited, self-absorbed captain in this country's navy. And the captain is kind of quiet for a moment, and then he gives it back and he says, have this decoded at once. That clearly couldn't be what he wanted to hear. So that captain was like the lion who went into his, wherever he goes, into the desert, and he comes upon a chimpanzee, and he says to the chimpanzee, who is the king of the jungle? And the scared, nervous chimpanzee says, why, you are, sir. And he was happy, and the lion roared. And then he went on his way, and he came across a hyena. And he says to the hyena, who is the king of the jungle? And the hyena says, well, your highness, of course, it's you. And very proud and thrilled for this answer, the lion roars again, and he goes on further. And then the lion comes across an elephant at a river, and the elephant is drinking. And the lion says to the elephant, who is the king of the jungle? And the elephant picks up that lion with his trunk, twists him around, throws him into the air, and he lands far downstream in the river. The lion picks himself up. He gets out of the river. He's bedraggled. He's soaking wet. And he comes up to the elephant and he says, just because you don't know the answer doesn't mean you have to get mad. And so the lion and the captain, they didn't want to hear what they didn't want to hear, right? They weren't open to hearing what it is that they didn't want to hear. They want to only listen and hear what they're expecting, what they want. And sometimes we're like that. Sometimes we don't have the ears to hear the things that maybe we're not prepared to hear, even if those things are going to get us more in touch with our own spirituality, more in touch with our connection to the divine, even if those things that we hear are going to help propel us to live our best life ever, help take us out of living small into playing our bigger game, because we're scared about it perhaps. Now, it doesn't make much sense. Who wouldn't want to hear? Who wouldn't want to hear that truth? That we are God in form, that we are God in action. But sometimes I think what happens is God is in the house. God is in our house. God is right where we are. But when we really step into that, when we really embrace it, when we really embrace our magnificence, and I think that we're going to have to then step out of our comfort zone. We know how to behave in our comfort zone. We know exactly what to do. We can plan for our days. There's not a lot of surprises. We're not super unhappy. And so we don't want to hear that inner urge. We're not tuned in to the voice of the divine, because we know somehow that voice of the divine is calling us higher, calling us to be greater, calling us to step into our power, calling us to stand up and declare the truth of who we are. And I think that that's frightening sometimes for some of us. Who am I? Who am I? So even though we want to discover God, we want to discover ourselves, and we want to discover life more clearly, we want to follow thee, listen more dearly, and follow thee more clearly, and all those earlies, right? We are hesitant. So this morning we're going to talk about 3 steps to where we can really open up a little bit more to that divine essence, to that voice, that inner genius that it's really our intuition, really. It's our higher voice. It's our higher power. It's our God self. It is our brilliance that is speaking to us. And it's always talking, but sometimes it has a little bit, it doesn't shout. It's always just encouraging and loving. But that internal mind chatter that I like to call monkey mind, well, that thing has a bit bigger voice. It's shouting all the time. And so it overpowers that inner internal God voice that we have. So Dr. Ernest Holmes, I don't even have to walk to the platform today. Dr. Ernest Holmes, founder of religious science, said this. He said, our highest faculty is intuition. And it comes to a point sometimes where, with no process of reasoning at all, we instantly know. Right? We instantly know. And Dr. Jonas Salk said, intuition will tell the thinking mind where to look next. So how do we tune into that? How do we tune in and listen to that voice that will tell us something that we can instantly know, or, at least if we're not instantly knowing it, where to look next? So that we don't have to be searching, thinking, wondering. You know, we want to go off. Sometimes we do go forward, but we're not following. It's not a inspired action that we're taking. We're trying to make things happen. Maybe we're trying to make things happen by keeping everything the same. And so if sometimes things get too good, things are a little bit unfamiliar or uncomfortable, we might try and make things happen to, as I just said, stay the same. So how do we get to that point? First of all, we have to know. We have to know and recognize that we do have, I'm going to call these soul signals just for the point of today's talk. We have those soul signals. We have them. Now, that might seem like pretty obvious. If I would ask anybody, do you have intuition? Is that voice speaking to you? You're going to say, of course. But we behave as if we've never heard it in our life. We behave, many of us, just going on with our five senses. Like I said, doing the same thing. That there is no inner voice. It's all on us. We don't ever stop and take the time to recognize that there is that within us. There is this power for good in the universe, greater than we are, that is always operating. There is this infinite divine intelligence that is filling us up always because it is us. And this intelligence can burst on the scene at any moment through our own intuition, our own soul signals, but we have to first allow it, but we have to also know that we have it. Because if we're not really knowing that we have it, we're never going to tune in. And it isn't in just some of us. It isn't just in those that are on the spiritual path. It's in everyone. And it's not just in humans, it's in everything, because there is only one thing. That one thing is God, that one thing is wholeness, that one thing is life, that one thing is joy, that one thing is creativity, that one thing is intelligence, that one thing is life, that one thing is health. It is in everything. The Australian brush turkey, for example, when it comes to time, mating season, the male and the female, they go into the country, they build a mound with leaves, and the female lays her eggs on this mound of leaves and twigs, and it's up to the male brush turkey to keep this mound at a particular temperature, because the eggs will not hatch unless they're kept at a constant temperature. So in the daytime, when the sun is hot, this male bush turkey will take off leaves, and in the evening, when it's cold, it will pile on the leaves. Now scientists, because we love to test things, scientists have gone and taken temperatures, and here's what they've discovered: that mound never varies by more than 1 degree. Why? Because that male bush turkey is listening to its own soul signal. It has its own voice, its own intuition, its own inner knowing. How does it know what the temperature is? But it knows. Similarly, what knows the monarch butterfly? You know, very famous for making that trek to California and Mexico every winter. Every fall, actually. Hundreds of thousands of them fly south. Some of them will fly as much, in Northern California, as much as 3,000 miles. They leave in the fall. They find a place, a glen, a tree that they've never been to before. They hibernate, they lay their eggs, and then they fly north and make that trek north. And then it is their great-grandchildren, because now a couple of generations have passed. Next year, it is their great-grandchildren that make that same trek, sometimes landing in the very same tree and the very same glen. How do they know? Because they have their own soul signal, because the infinite intelligence is what they are, and they're tuned in. They're not listening to their internal mind chatter. They're not comparing their lives with other people. They just go with the flow. And so do you think we're any less than that? No. We have that inspired voice that is always within us as well. But we have to recognize that we have it. We have to be open to knowing that and to consciously tune in and quiet the mental chatter, the monkey mind, that internal mind chatter that is constantly stuck in the five senses. Because if we're married to our five senses, and we're really married to that, we're not going to hear that inspired intuition. So we have to, step two really is to be open to it. We need to be open to hearing our own internal wisdom. And what does that mean? We need to get out of our own way. Forget about those five senses. We need to be an empty vessel. We need to tune in. So it's like the professor who went to the Zen master and said, you know, I want to learn a little bit about Zen. And so the Zen master was thrilled and invited him in and said, well, you know, in Zen, it's very important to have an ethical practice. And the professor said, oh, yes, yes. Ethics is a very fascinating field of study, and I have studied many different forms of ethics, and as a matter of fact, I have written a book on ethics. And he went on and on and on and gave this whole treatise on ethics. And finally, when he stopped talking, the Zen master said, oh, very nice. And then the Zen master says, and then in Zen, you know, our motivation for doing things is very important. And we need to come with the proper motivation that in our actions and in our speaking, it's helpful. We want to speak when it's helpful. And the professor said, oh yes, motivational theories, I'm all over that. Love motivational theories, read a lot of them, but you know what? There are flaws in each one of them. And he went on to discuss about the flaws in each of these motivational theories. And the Zen master just sat. And when he finally was finished talking, the Zen master said, oh, I see. Would you like a cup of tea? Would you like a cup of tea? And he said, oh, that would be pleasant. And so the Zen master poured in the tea, and he kept on pouring it till the cup was overflowing. And he kept on pouring it, and the cup is still overflowing. And this professor, who was never at a loss for words, was quite at a loss for words until it overflowed onto his lap. And at that point, he jumped up and said, can't you see that this cup is full and it can't take in any more tea? Can't you see that? And the Zen master said, yes, I see. Can't you see that your mind is so full, it can't take in any more? How can you learn about Zen? And we can say, how can we learn about the presence and the power of the divine? How can our mind take in our own glory, our own abundance, our own magnificence, our own brilliance, if we are so loaded up with the five senses that want to keep us stuck? If we so identify ourselves and our life with our labels, and we have a million labels right? We're mothers and fathers and employees and husbands and daughters and aunts and uncles and every other thing. You know, car owners and renters and U.S. citizens and taxpayers, and we've got all of these labels, and each label has a certain appearance in our mind. Our minds are so full of this stuff that we are not free to be who we are, because who we think we are is exactly who we are not. We think we're these small human separate forms. Oh no, we are not. We are the awareness behind the forms. We are the God in action in this body, creating our magnificent life. But we think our life maybe isn't so magnificent. Well, and then we're fixing, because we are so stuck in the three-dimensional reality of comparing, judging, assessing, good, bad, right, wrong, better, worse, right? Healthy, not healthy, enthusiastic, not enthusiastic, critical, not critical, loving, encouraging, not encouraging. We're so busy in that, our minds are full of that. And there is no room, in that mind, there is no room for God. There is no room to understand that presence and power is right within us. There is no room to hear our own internal voice, our own inner genius. That still small voice is talking, but we are not listening. So we've got to tune in and listen. We've got to allow that brilliance that we are to make itself known to us in a greater way. And how much fun is that? How much fun is that? How free might we be to take a step back, whatever's going on in our lives, and kind of have fun with whatever it is that we've created? Look at how wonderful. Even if it's, let's say it's not so positive. We look at our lives and we want more money, we want more health, we want better relationships, we want a better job, we don't want a job at all. Whatever it is that we want. I had a rude awakening. I do not listen to the news. Rude awakening when I got a paycheck last Friday. And it was significantly less. I was not happy. And then I was wondering why these people were commenting on Facebook. It's like, oh, now I know. But you know what? Is that the reality? Am I limited because now I have $40 less or whatever it was? Am I going to be so drawn in to this drama that I'm going to allow it to take my essence, my energy, my frequency, and have it go down because of some external event? Or can I laugh at myself and say, oh, you know what, Janet, you are so funny that for this moment, you forgot who you were. For this moment, you forgot that you were the powerful creator of your own life, and you thought it's your paycheck that has some power over you. A piece of paper. Some coinage in a bank. Silly girl. How can I rise up above? I am part and parcel of an unlimited flow. That there is a power for good, an essence, a presence, a something that is so great, it's unnameable in our human form. That's who I am. That's who you are. But we need to be open to hear that in a greater way. And so we need to consciously hear it because our life is very entertaining. We have a lifetime of practice. We're so involved in it. We're very involved in our own tapestry of life, our own movie. And so once we hear that, we need to understand we have it. We need to be open to hearing it. And then once we hear it, guess what? We need to take some action. We need to take some inspired action. And that is maybe really where the scariest part is. So the other things is, okay, intellectually, I can get it. But then it's the action. Because it's with that action, that's when the change is going to happen. So it's like the two buddies who were in this field, and all of a sudden a bull is coming, right? A charging bull, so one of them scampers up a tree. And he says to his friend, come on, get up this tree, you idiot. No, God will save me. And the other one says, are you crazy? Get up the tree, you idiot. And with that, the bull takes his friend and whips him in the air and throws him, and the bull scampers off. And the friend in the tree comes down and says, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" He says, "I thought for sure God was going to save me." And his friend says, "Well, didn't you hear God yelling at you to get up that tree?" And so that's what we need to take action. When we hear that voice that says, climb that tree. Because guess what? When we climb that tree, maybe we're going to have a whole different viewpoint. That inspired action is going to take us from where we are to where we're supposed to be. It might take us where we are to a sense of even more harmony, more abundance, more joy. It may take us to that place where we know in a greater way than ever before that what we are is the infinite in form. Whoa, how awesome is that? But then what are we going to talk? I think sometimes we think, what are we going to talk about? If everything is so wonderful, but you know what? We are still vibrant. We are still expressing. We are still creating. We are still in this stuff. It just doesn't rule us anymore because now we know that it is the essence that is living through us. And we are a happy participator in our own life, in our own unfoldment, in our own creation, in our own good. And what's more fun than that? So, the 3 steps, remember that you have this internal voice, this intuition, and be open to hearing it. And once you hear it, take some action. Take some action. Take some inspired action. We need to, it might be white knuckling to be better than who we ever were. Because it's scary to live our brilliance, sometimes to live our genius. We think, who are we? Well, we are a candle on the water. We are that brilliant point of life. We are God in form, living this brilliance because we are so important to the divine. So we can let our own candle shine everywhere. Be open to it, and then just imagine what our own unlimited possibilities are going to unfold for us. And so it is.